Have you ever wondered what goes on in the mind of a murderer? A chilling question to ponder, isn't it? And yet, it's a riddle that has intrigued, baffled, and horrified us for centuries. Today, we delve into a tale that brings us face to face with this very puzzle. A story that unfolds in the most unexpected of places. A courtroom. Imagine, if you will, a scene straight out of a movie. The courtroom is abuzz with whispers, lawyers with their briefcases, the judge with an air of solemnity, and a crowd of spectators, their faces etched with curiosity and fear. At the center of it all, a woman. Unremarkable in appearance, but with a tale that is anything but ordinary. She stands there, a picture of calm in the eye of the storm, her hands folded in front of her. As the murmurs die down, she raises her head, her eyes meeting those of the judge. And then, she utters words that send a chill down everyone's spine. "I am a murderer." The room plunges into a stunned silence. The woman, who until a moment ago seemed so ordinary, so unassuming, was confessing to a crime most heinous. The spectators, the jury, even the seasoned judge, all are left wide-eyed, struggling to comprehend the gravity of her admission. Who is this woman? What drove her to commit such an act? Was she a cold, calculating killer, or a tormented soul pushed to the brink? Questions swirl around the room, thickening the air with a sense of mystery and suspense. The courtroom, once filled with the humdrum of legal proceedings, now holds its breath, bracing for the storm that is about to come. The woman, seemingly oblivious to the shock she has caused, continues to hold the gaze of the room. There's a sense of resolve in her eyes, a determination to tell her story, to lay bare the truth behind her chilling confession. As the courtroom fell silent, the woman began to tell her terrifying tale. The journey into the mind of a murderer was just beginning. In a chilling voice, the woman started recounting her life before the crime. Her story began in a small town, an idyllic setting where she was born and raised, seemingly a world away from the horrors that would later unfold. She painted a picture of an ordinary childhood, filled with the usual ups and downs. School, friends, family outings, and the like. But as she delved deeper into her past, a more complex image began to emerge. A volatile home life, an abusive father, a mother who turned a blind eye. The seeds of discord were sown early and grew in the shadows, feeding off neglect and resentment. As she grew older, she sought solace in relationships, hoping to escape the chaos of her home life. But the cycle of abuse repeated itself, and each relationship seemed to mirror the dysfunction she had known as a child. The woman described a series of failed relationships marked by manipulation and control, each one eroding her sense of self-worth a little more. She spoke of a life filled with disappointment and betrayal, a life where trust was a luxury she could ill afford. These experiences, she explained, warped her perception of love and relationships, pushing her further into a corner of despair and isolation. She was a woman on the edge, teetering dangerously close to a precipice, but it was her final relationship, the one she referred to as the breaking point, that proved to be the catalyst. This relationship, she said, was the straw that broke the camel's back, the final blow that shattered her already fragile psyche. As she ended her narrative, one could not help but shudder at the cold, hard reality of her life. It was a life filled with pain and heartbreak, a life that seemed to have been written with the ink of tragedy. It was a life that offered little hope and even less reason for optimism. Yet, it was this life that shaped the woman who would later stand in a courtroom, confessing to a crime that shook the world. Little did anyone know, these seemingly mundane details were the precursors to an unfathomable act. In a turn of events, the woman's narrative shifted to the night of the crime. It was a story that unfolded under the cover of darkness, a tale of a murder most foul, committed not by a hardened criminal but a woman, seemingly ordinary in every way. The moon was hanging low in the sky that night, casting long, ominous shadows that danced along the walls of her home. The air was heavy with an eerie silence, the kind that often precedes a storm. She recounted how her heart pounded in her chest, a wild, primal rhythm that echoed the chaos of her thoughts. Her mind was a whirlwind of emotions, fear, anger, despair, all colliding in a tempest of raw, unadulterated rage. She was no longer herself, but a force of nature, driven by an instinct as old as time itself, a predator stalking its prey. She moved through the house like a ghost, every step calculated, every breath measured. There was an odd sense of calm amidst the turmoil, a clarity of purpose that she had never experienced before. She was a woman on a mission, and nothing could stand in her way. The crime scene was painted in vivid detail. The room, dimly lit by the cold, silver light of the moon. The figure, lying unsuspecting in their bed. The glint of the knife in her hand, its blade reflecting the turmoil in her eyes. The swift, decisive strike, a moment frozen in time, forever etched in her memory. She spoke of the aftermath, the deafening silence that followed the deed, the stillness of the figure, their life extinguished in an instant, the warm, sticky feeling of blood on her hands, a grim reminder of her actions. In her narrative, there was no hint of regret, no sign of remorse. Every word, every detail was delivered with a cold, chilling detachment. And then, in a voice as quiet as the grave, she uttered the words that would send shivers down our spines. In a chilling confession, she admitted without remorse, "I am the murderer." But what could possibly drive a person to commit such a heinous act? This is a question that often boggles the mind when we confront the grim reality of a murder. To comprehend the motive behind this woman's actions, we must delve into her psychological state and the circumstances that led her to this extreme action. The human mind is a complex labyrinth, and the factors that can push someone over the edge can be as varied as they are disturbing. The woman in question was not born a murderer. She was shaped into one by a series of unfortunate events, a culmination of personal turmoil and psychological distress. Her life was marred by constant struggles and a series of traumatic experiences that left deep psychological scars. These scars, instead of healing, festered into a malignant rage that eventually led her down a dark path. Her environment, too, played a significant role. She was surrounded by neglect and mistreatment, leading to a profound sense of hopelessness and despair. This, coupled with her deteriorating mental health, created a perfect storm, a breeding ground for malevolent thoughts and actions. Psychologists suggest that when a person feels cornered with no way out, they can resort to drastic measures. It's a survival instinct gone awry, a desperate attempt to regain control. For this woman, murder was her way out, her way to regain some semblance of control over her life. She was also plagued by a distorted perception of reality. People with such psychological conditions often struggle to distinguish right from wrong, their moral compass skewed by their mental state. This dissonance can lead them to commit acts that they rationalize as necessary, even if they're criminal. It's a chilling thought, isn't it? That a person can be driven to such lengths that they can be made to believe that taking another's life is their only option. It's a stark reminder of the complexities of the human mind and the devastating impact that trauma, neglect, and mental health issues can have on a person's life and actions. As unsettling as it was, her motive was laid bare for all to hear. In the wake of her shocking confession, the courtroom was left stunned. The air hung heavy with disbelief, the echo of her words still ringing in the ears of all present. It was a moment that would be etched in the annals of courtroom history, a chilling testament to the dark depths of human capability. Following her admission, the court was thrown into an uproar. The attorneys scrambled to reassess their strategies, their faces a mask of shock and dismay. The judge, with a stern expression, called for order, his gavel echoing in the stunned silence. The jury, a cross-section of everyday people, were left with the daunting task of deciding her fate. The impact of her confession rippled out, reaching far beyond the confines of the courtroom. Friends and family, those who thought they knew her best, were left grappling with a reality they could scarcely comprehend. Heartbreak, confusion, betrayal, a melee of emotions swirled in their hearts. The woman they knew and loved was now a self-confessed murderer. The question of why haunted their waking hours, the answers eluding them in the inky darkness. She, the protagonist of this chilling narrative, stood in the eye of the storm. Unflinching, her eyes held a grim determination. Her confession was not a plea for mercy, but a stark revelation of her actions. She was ready to face the consequences, whatever they may be. In the aftermath, she was met with the full force of the law. A life sentence was handed down, a fitting punishment for the gravity of her crime. She was led away, her stride unbroken, leaving behind a courtroom, a community, a family forever changed. Her confession left an indelible mark, a chilling reminder of the dark potential of the human mind. A testament to the fact that monsters do not always lurk in the shadows. Sometimes they hide in plain sight behind the facade of normalcy, waiting for the right moment to reveal their true nature.